6 p.m. Car local time. A very good day, dear viewers. It's time for 6 p.m. Channel 2 News Bulletin. I'm Rana Al-Khassas and we start off with the headlines, dear viewers. President Fattah al-Sisi reviews with visiting Jordanian King Abdullah II, enhancing bilateral ties as well as issues of mutual concern. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli shares a cabinet meeting on a number of important domestic files. Egypt strongly condemns the Turkish aggression on Syrian territory. Welcome back. President Fattah al-Sisi received today King Abdullah II and Queen Rania of Jordan. A red carpet reception was held for the Jordanian guests, followed by summit talks between President Fattah al-Sisi and King Abdullah on means of enhancing bilateral ties. The two leaders were then engaged in expanded talks, bringing together delegations from both countries, meeting in the framework of the notable success of the latest Joint Higher Committee Convention in Cairo, held last July. President al-Sisi hailed the promoted level of economic ties and trade exchange volume, coping with the strong historical political ties binding both nations. The head of state further discussed with King Abdullah the latest regional developments, on top of which is the Palestinian cause, reiterating Egypt's support for the Palestinians' legitimate rights in establishing an independent state along the 1967 borderline with its capital, Eastern Jerusalem, in line with relevant international laws and the Arab Peace Initiative. The President also voiced his rejection for the condemnation of the latest Turkish aggression on Syria and warned of its serious repercussions on Syrian territorial integrity and regional security. President Fattah al-Sisi received today a phone call from Iraqi President Burhan Saleh, where they both exchanged points on the latest regional developments, especially in Syria. Presidential spokesman Bassem Radi said the two leaders condemned the Turkish assault on Syrian territory, which badly influences its unity, sovereignty and the course of political process to solve its conflict. The two leaders further also agreed on intensifying political consultations to step up joint Arab action against Turkey, which through its aggression in Syria threatens not only the regional security and stability but also that of the world.
يمر العالم بمفترق طرق لتستمر مصر كما كانت دوما ركيزة أساسية لاستعادة الأمن والاستقرار في الشرق الأوسط. ولا يسعني إلا أن أؤكد رفض مصر للتدخل الأجنبي في الشؤون العربية، فقد آن الأوان أن تستعاد مؤسسات الدولة الليبية وتقوم مصر بدور نشط لجمع الفرقاء الليبيين. إن نزيف الدم في سوريا وغياب الأفق السياسي أمر لم يعد مقبولا استمراره، فالمطلوب واضح: وحدة سوريا وسلامتها الإقليمية. لا تدخر مصر جهدا لدعم وحدة اليمن وسلامته الإقليمية. وفي وسط تلك التحديات التي يموج بها النظام الدولي، إلا أن مصر استطاعت أن تحافظ على استقرارها وسط محيط إقليمي شديد الاضطراب في ضوء ارتباط الأمن القومي العربي بما فيه أمن الخليج العربي بأمن مصر. على البشرية أن تستعيد جوهر إنسانيتها والوصول إلى عالم أكثر أمناً ورخاءً لأجيالنا القادمة.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli today asserted that Egypt made a notable economic progress as testified by the world financial and economic institutions, adding that the government follows the right path to attract more investments onto the national markets. The Prime Minister made these remarks during the weekly cabinet meeting, with largely focused on important economic, social and developmental files. Madbouli noted that the country's economic growth rate stood at 5.6%, its highest since 2010, and unemployment rate declined to 7.5%, while foreign reserves rose to $45.12 billion, the largest ever in the Egyptian economy's history. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warned the European Union today that Ankara would allow millions of refugees to head to Europe if the bloc criticized Turkey's military offensive in Syria. This came as Turkey pressed its military aggression against US-allied Kurdish fighters in northeast Syria, shelling towns and bombing targets from the air in an operation that has forced thousands of people to flee their homes. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, at least 23 fighters with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces and 8 civilians, 2 of them SDF administrators, have been killed. The observatory added that more than 60,000 people have fled since the offensive began. The Arab League will hold an extraordinary meeting on Saturday following a call by Egypt for the body to meet over Turkey's offensive into Syria. A foreign ministry statement condemned it in the strongest terms, the Turkish aggression on Syrian territory, saying the offensive represents an unacceptable attack on the sovereignty of a brotherly Arab state. The ministry called on the international community to repel such assault and halt any attempt to occupy the Syrian territories or force a demographic change to its population. The renewed Turkish aggression sparked world condemnations, where the United Nations Security Council will be meeting today to discuss the situation in Syria at the request of the body's 5 European members: Britain, France, Germany, Belgium and Poland. Meanwhile, a well-known diplomatic source said that France's foreign ministry summoned the Turkish ambassador to Paris over Ankara's air and ground offensive into Kurdish-controlled areas of northern Syria. For his part, US President Donald Trump called the Turkish assault a bad idea and asserted that he did not endorse it. Trump further said he expected Turkey to protect civilians and religious minorities and prevent a humanitarian crisis, as Turkey has said it would do. The same end, the European Union's Executive Commission said that Turkey must consider that its bid to join the bloc requires it to adhere to EU foreign policy and again rejected Ankara's military operation in northern Syria. In a related development, NATO Secretary General said Turkey's military operation in northeastern Syria must be restrained, adding that it was important not to destabilize the region any further. Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdel Mahdi today promised a full probe into last week's violence that left more than 100 dead in protests, as claim returned ahead of 3 days of national mourning. In a televised address to the nation, Abdel Mahdi pledged a package of reforms and said his government would carry out thorough investigation as well as pay compensation to the martyrs, both civilians and members of the security forces killed in clashes. He also said he would propose a government reshuffle to parliament. The Iraqi government announced 3 days of national mourning in the wake of the unrest. French President Emmanuel Macron today warned Britain and Brexit was a British domestic crisis and it would have to take responsibility for how to leave the European Union. Macron added that Britain will have to pay the price should it decide to proceed with a position over Brexit that is unacceptable for the other 27 European Union countries. The French president's remarks came as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, an Irish leader, held talks today in a last-ditched attempt to revive a British proposal for a Brexit deal that the European Union said falls far short of what is needed for an orderly departure. Johnson said that he was cautiously optimistic, though he said that it would be very difficult to strike a Brexit deal by next week when the EU holds a crucial summit on Thursday and Friday. The Swedish Academy Nobel said today that the Austrian writer Peter Handke won the 2019 Nobel Prize for Literature, and the 2018 award went to Polish author Olga Terkoza. The Academy said in a statement that Handke, 76, was recognized for a body of work which includes novels, essays, notebooks, and drama, and that would, of course, have explored the specificity of human experience. It added that Terkoza won for a narrative imagination, that the encyclopedia passion represents the crossing of boundaries as a form of life. Well, dear viewers, then moving on to the world of economic and finance, where the World Bank forecast today said that Egypt's economy would grow by 5.6% during this fiscal year instead of 5.5%, in line with the bank's expectations 6 months ago. The bank also inched up its growth estimate for Egypt's gross domestic product to 5.6% instead of 5.5%, matching the government's figures that were released earlier. The international lender further said that direct foreign investments will increase to reach 2.1% as a result, in a revive in various sectors, namely exports, investments, tourism and gas. The Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics announced that Egypt's annual urban consumer price inflation decreased to 4.8% in September from 7.5% in August, slowing to its lowest level in almost 7 years. Inflation has been easing in recent months as the country approaches the end of its economic reform program. The International Monetary Fund hailed Egypt's economic reform program that remarkably contributed in reducing the country's budget deficit. Moving on to Egypt's stock markets, which the indices collectively rose during today's dealings. The weekend sessions boosted by purchasing operations carried out by local and foreign investors. The benchmark EGX 30 index added 1% to end the week dealings at 14,323 points, and the capped EGX 30 index was also up 0.9%. The medium capped index EGX 70 and the more expanded EGX 100 index both edged higher 1.1% and 0.9% respectively. Moving on to world markets, global stock markets traded mixed today, with investors cautious as they sift through conflicting reports about upcoming China-US trade talks. In Europe, London's blue chip FTSE 100 index added 0.2%. In Paris, the CAC 40 climbed 0.3%, and DAX 30 in Frankfurt was up less than 0.1%. Across Asia, MSCI's broadcast index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan eased 0.31%, while Japan's Nikkei slipped 0.11%. Hong Kong edged up 0.1%, while Tokyo finished 0.5% higher, and Shanghai put on 0.8%. Manila was also higher. However, Seoul shed 0.8%, Singapore eased 0.4%, Mumbai dropped 0.8%, and Bangkok fell 0.5%. Sydney and Jakarta were flat. Oil prices dipped on wariness over U.S.-China talks. Brent crude futures fell 0.15% to $58.23 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude lost 0.11% to $52.53 per barrel. As for other commodities, spot gold added 0.1% to $1,570 an ounce. Copper rose as much as 1.1% to $5,749 a ton. However, after falling 0.3%, it looked set to be its best day in a month.